Thank you so much for staying with us. This is still Fafanua Africa, and today we are discussing the National Youth Confab, what brought about this, and if at all it is necessary. Joining me right now is Marwan Umar-Gwamba, a Special Assistant to the Minister of Youth Development in Nigeria. Thank you so much, Marwan, for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me here today.
An absolute pleasure. All right, subsequently we'll be joined by other guests. But in the meantime, Marwan, I would like to start by asking, is a national confab the answer that we seek at this time?
Thank you so much for asking me this very important question. I think to answer your question, I will need to also revise us just back to the national youth conferences in Nigeria. Are they impactful, or is it an answer? I think based on what I will say now, it would also determine, the listeners will determine whether the National Youth Conference declared by President Bola Tinubu is going to be impactful or not. Now, if you look at the history of the National Youth Conference in Nigeria dating to 1957, where we have, I mean, not a National Youth Conference, actually, the previous national conferences, which is, if you dated back to 1957, we have a constitutional conference in London, which also, as a result of that conference, the Nigerians' independence has been confirmed later in 1960. And also, we have also national conferences in 1997, which was also called Constitutional Assembly, under President Osisiogu Osikenyi, and that drafted the 1979 Constitution. And also, we have several other conferences. Even in 2005, there is, national political reform under same, President Osisiogu Osikenyi. And in 2014, during the President Goodluck Jonathan, we have a national youth national conference, which also happened in 2014, close to the end of tenure of President Goodluck Jonathan. And in that national conference, there also was National Youth Conference as a sideline of the event, during President Goodluck Jonathan. In 2001, there was National Youth Conference hosted under Osisiogu Osikenyi, which discussed also youth engagement. And part of the key outcome was that the discussion around national youth policy has also been formulated around that time, and later in 2009 also there is a National Youth Summit, which focus on youth empowerment and youth engagement in governance as well. Now, dating back to these conferences, most of these conferences has been impactful because of that constitutional conference in London. That is when, the discussion, because there was massive advocacy about Nigerians' independence in 1957. And that constitutional conference in London one of the impactful result is we are now as a sovereign nation, we have an independence. And other several conferences have happened and they are very, very impactful. And idea of having the National Youth Conference by President Bola Tinubu to be implemented is a key, because we are a nation that have 70% of young people, which means we are talking about 150 million people out of 232 million people to be projected. Now, if you look at the number of the percentage of young people in this country, there is need for this robust youth engagement. And the only way you engage young people is to engage them through a dialogue. And this dialogue is called National Youth Confab, which is the initiative of President Bola Tinubu. And it is timely because this is a time when this country have 33.3% on the level of unemployment, as as declared by National Bureau of Statistics. And one of the reasons why the president see it very important to have the conference is to discuss how do we empower young people, how do we protect them, and how do we support them as a government. And I think it is timely and it is very necessary to have this National Youth Conference. And I assure you that under the leadership of the Honorable Minister, Honorable Ayodele Olawande, the National Youth Conference has come to stay, and also it will be impactful to the young people as well.
So I do appreciate the breakdown and the history of the National Youth Confab. But then again, I think that the concerns of the youth, especially at this time where if you look at how it used to be, not like much has changed, but recently you see a lot of youth having to use, hashtag end bad governance, hashtag end SARS to send messages to the people in governance. And, eventually it seems as though there's nothing done about it. So now the question that people are asking is, if all of these messages were sent prior to now to the people in government and nothing was done, there was no acknowledgement of the feelings of the youth, there was no reassurance that there will be a solution to their problems, to their outcry, why do we think that a national youth conference is going to change that? A lot of people are speculating that it's just going to be a talk shop per usual. What has changed? For every time there's ever been a national youth conference, did we record any tangible changes? Is it going to be different now, or is it going to be the same thing?
Yeah, so just like I have said earlier, if you look at what I have said, I have mentioned some of the impactful measures of the National Youth Conference. Then on the reason why there is need for us to have a National Youth Conference declared by the President, despite you just mentioned about NSAS, that just happened, and the protest on end bad governance. You see, this country, for this country to work, it is the responsibilities of all stakeholders, not only the government. Everyone needs to be patriotic, and we have to look at things critically and holistically. And that is the only way we can solve Nigeria's problem. The current problem that we have does not start in 2015, does not start in 2023, even after the government of APC comes in power. The young people, the insecurity problem that we have that is emanating, the issues around having issues around quality education, can be dated back to even 40 years ago, when a son of no one cannot go to the public school and can be able to have knowledge, can be able to have a quality education. Today, our public school has turned to a place where you will find out that a person can go to school and graduate with a secondary school certificate without even knowing how to construct an essay, and also not even having a skills for him to be able to survive and to be employed. So, these accumulated issues, which has been dated back to many years ago, that is what brings about the issue of insecurity that we have today. Because it is still young people, almost 80% of them are engaged in Boko Haram and banditry and all sort of crimes, including cyber crimes that we have currently in this country. You'll find out that they are young people because we have neglected them 40 years ago. And in order to solve this problem, there is need for robust conversation with the community leaders, including the young people at the community, to discuss issues that is originated from the young people on how government can solve this problem. Let me give you an example. The most important thing that the government needs to do for it to formulate its policy and direction is data. And through this National Youth Conference, we are going to have a data that is generated directly from the young people from the community on how they want to have the Nigeria they want. That is the Nigeria we want, because I'm also a young person. So the National Youth Conference is very significant at this moment. And just like I have said, our key priority as a government this year, just as the Honorable Minister have said, maybe you might have seen it in the Channel's television when he was delivering his, his interview, and also in the Arise television, that what we need now is a National Youth Conference that is taken down to the community. We don't want a conference where just people come to Abuja, drink some tea, people from the formal sector talking about youth issues. This conference is going to feature at the community level, which means that even robust engagement at the community will be held on how we can solve problems. And don't forget that Nigeria have many regions, and each region have its own peculiarity and a particular problem. The problem in the Northwest will be entirely, a different problem in the Southwest or Southeast or the North Central or the South, as I've said. I think if there is a peculiar problem that is in all regions, is about issues of youth unemployment, which is one of the key priorities. You can remember that the president has launched many initiatives, including the president's CNG initiative, where we also engage Okada riders and motor riders at the community level. And also youth in the formal sector have not been neglected with the NELT fund, because many beneficiaries under the NELT fund, initiated by President Bola Tinubu, has also been there. So it is not that we don't know the existential problem, but also we want to also have more knowledge by opening the door for more young people and community leaders to come together to discuss issues that will solve problem of young people in this country. So this National Youth Conference is going to be impactful, as I have just said, and it is not going to be a business as usual.
All right, thank you again for that. Now, I would like for us to talk about the metrics for selection. Now, in 2014, the National Conference had 18 youth delegates from the National Youth Council of Nigeria, that's the NYCN, National Association of Nigeria Students, that's NANS, and other youth organizations, and this represented only 4% of the 494 delegates who participated. And this is a paltry amount for a country that is predominantly youth, with about 70% of its population below 30 and a median age of 18. Now, the proposed National Youth Conference of 2025 is said to, is aiming to have only youths participate, right? We still don't exactly know what the metrics for selection is, but what will be different now? How are we going to be able to represent the interests of the majority of the youth and not some randomly selected people in the room representing 70% of the entire population?
Okay, I think let me also correct you that one of the major way of engaging young people is through their youth representative. The National Youth Council is the umbrella that represents young people in Nigeria. The 162 million young people that I have just mentioned, according to the statistic, are also represented by the National Youth Council. So engaging National Youth Council is also one of the key priorities for us. And also, don't forget that we also have Nigerian Youth Parliament, which is also part of the governance and leadership process that the Ministry of Youth Development initiated right during President Umar-Musa-Yar'Adua. And we engage 109 young people from each senatorial district in this country. That is also another way to, engage young people at the community, because these young people are not people that are living in Abuja. They are drawn from the senatorial district, each state represented by 3 people. And also we have a coalition of civil society organizations that also are going to be part of this, the committee for the establishment of the National Youth Conference. As a government, we have youth initiative in different ministries and parastatals. That is why each ministry and parastatal also is communicated to be represented in the organizing committee of the National Youth Conference, not only the organizing committee of the National Youth Conference. And also, just like I have mentioned to you, the difference between this National Youth Conference and the other one that has been held previously is because this one, we intend to take it to the community. And when I said to the community, there will be series of dialogue in geopolitical zones, at the state level and geopolitical zones, even before the final, submission of policy draft document that will happen in the FCT. So we are not saying that we are neglecting the community. No, there will be series of dialogue. There will be series of conversation at the community level, even before, that is why it is 30 days. We don't intend to have all people coming to Abuja for the next 30 days. But we intend to have the discussion at the community level, at the geopolitical zone, to ensure that a lot of voices are heard. Let me also remind you that the National Youth Policy of Nigeria is currently being reviewed. We've also held, a regional consultative meeting in about 4 regions now, namely the South-South region, the Southeast, the Northeast region, and the Northwest region. And we are yet to conclude the other 3 geopolitical zones. These are part of the engagement that will reshape the policy document, including the communique that will be transmitted to the president for the National Youth Conference. So it is not going to be a business as usual. The development partners has also been engaged. When I say development partners, I mean most of the UN agencies and most donor agencies that are in Nigeria and that are doing youth work, that are supporting the young people at various levels. They have also been engaged. They have also been contacted to participate in the organizing, including the draft of the policy document of the National Youth Conference. So it's not going to be a business as usual.
Right. Okay. Let's talk about budgetary allocation because, again, that's one of the concerns of the people. They say that the idea for this conference came up in October, and since then, we did not exactly hear anything about it, and there was no budgetary allocation. But before we go ahead, I sincerely apologize. We have the President, All Africa Students Union, Osisiogu Osikenyi. Thank you so much for joining us. Please confirm you can hear me.
Inviting me to this very important position.
All right, thank you so much, Osisiogu, for joining us. Okay, very quickly, before I ask about the budgetary allocation, Osisiogu, you know about the upcoming National Youth Confab. There's been differing opinions about it. Some say it's not necessary, it's a waste of money, and some say that it's what we need to get answers for the youth, especially concerning unemployment, political participation, and things like that. What is your take on the National Youth Confab?
Yeah, thank you very much. I would be surprised when anybody thinks that the National Youth Conference at this point is not necessary because it is one of the most responsive actions of Mr. President towards the yearnings of the youth. We have seen from past administrations over the years, youth coming up to express themselves in very unwholesome means like the NSAS protests and all of that, what we've seen. We think that this is a very important opportunity for youth to be part of policy making and make input into governance. And this is also a part of the Presidency New Hope agenda towards youth development. Of course, there's nothing for us without us. So I want to think that it is very timely, it's very germane, and it's an auspicious opportunity for youth of this great country to be part of governance and to make input into policy. For me, that come from the education advocacy space, I want to also believe that Mr. President has started, of course, with the student loan scheme and all of that. So when we go to school, what do we do exactly? We have continued to yearn that there is need for a new curriculum, a pro-Africa curriculum for this country, that will reflect the need. You've seen the president create an economy where we have a closed system. Today, there is a lot that young people can do from within. So such policies that will help young people take over the space is what we need right now. So I want to say categorically, it is needed, it is applaudable, and we must commend this administration for this opportunity. Now it is for us as young people of Nigeria, what we make out of this great opportunity the president has given to us to make or mar our chances at being part of governance and the success of this government.
Right, okay, so let me come back to Marwan about the budgetary allocation. Now, I did mention that a lot of people have been concerned about the fact that there is a slated youth conference, but nothing has been said concerning the budgetary allocation, seeing that we are working with a tight budget. What do you have to say about that, Marwan?
Yes, thank you very much for this question. But don't also forget that government have many ways of implementing its programs. Basically, we do, for instance, as a Ministry of Youth, I know there are a couple of things that we do that are not in the budgetary allocation of the ministry, but has been implemented. For instance, I know we did the 7th National Council on Youth Development that was held in Maiduguri with the support from the UNFP and the lack of the United Nations agencies that are operating in Nigeria. And also, I so much believe that this National Youth Conference budget is under review, as you know, and it's yet to be passed by the National Assembly. And also, I want to believe that there is huge consideration also from the National Assembly, not only on the budget allocation for the National Youth Conference, but also for the entire budget of the Ministry of Youth, because the National Assembly have a very vibrant, committee members who are also young people and are very passionate. And I believe they are trying their best to see that, in terms of the budgetary allocation, I cannot preempt their effort. I mean, I cannot be the one to declare it now preempting the effort, but I know effort has been ongoing in the National Assembly to ensure that not only the National Youth Conference, but the entire budgetary allocation of the ministry is increased to the maximum level, just to reflect the renewed hope agenda of the President Bola Tinubu. So I so much believe that there is no call for concern. There is nothing to worry about when there is no clear budgetary allocation reflected in the budget. We still have time for the budgetary process, including the passage of the budget, which we await for the National Assembly to also do their work in terms of doing the other necessary things around that. So I so much believe that that is nothing to worry about.
Many thanks for staying with us. You're still watching Fafanua Africa. This is a show where we spotlight the youth across the African continent, their challenges, their opportunities, and some of the biggest issues that they're faced with. And in this case, it's going to be the National Conference, National Youth Conference 2025, right in Nigeria. Now, I still have my guest with me, the Special Assistant to the Ministry of Youth Development Nigeria, Marwan Umar-Gwamba. And I also have the President, All African Student Union, Osisiogu Osikenyi. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for still being here. Now let's go back to the budget. Not to overflog the matter of money in this case, but is this not a waste of money? Now, a lot of people would say, and I'm going to direct my question at you, Marwan, a lot of people would argue that we could have press briefings, or we could go on Twitter spaces, we could speak with the youth like other countries do. And last year, Kenya did it, and that allowed a lot more youth to converse and communicate, with the president or whoever is in the leadership position at the time. So there are so many other options that we can deploy. Not to say that the youth conference is not a necessity, but having such a large conference when there are other options that can be deployed is what a lot of youths find challenging. So Marwan, what do you have to say about that?
Now, thank you very much for this important question, and I think that reflects what the Honorable Minister of Youth Development is passionate about. Minister of Youth Development is passionate about young people, both informal and formal sector. When you said you want to do a national youth conference and you decided to engage on Twitter Spaces and Facebook, you are neglecting the fact that there are many young people who are the majority of them are not even in these spaces. How do we hear from them? How do they amplify their voices? So you cannot limit the conversations on Twitter or Facebook or even social media, while a lot of young people are struggling with what they eat, not even having the money to buy data and be in those spaces. So if you want to engage young people, you have to engage them constructively, and you have to give an enabling environment for that engagement. We intend to engage both young people from the formal and informal sector. That is why we are not limiting to only social media. Some you need to go to the community. Some you need to have their community representative to hear directly from them. Let me tell you that we are a nation which have about 20 million, based on the statistic by the National Bureau of Statistics, about 20 million out of school children, which majority of them come from various sectors, including the northern region, with the Northwest having to about 5.6 to 7 million out of school children. So now, if parents are even struggling with the money, to send people to school, imagine discussing their future in Twitter or Facebook. So it is not the issue of waste of money. It's not the issue of misplacement of priority. But when you want to engage with young people, you have to allow them and give them an enabling environment for them to air their voices. I have been an advocate before working with the government. I have been an advocate for quality education. Comrade Osisiogu can also, testify to that fact. And I do advocacy, including advocacy at the community level, even before assuming my role as a special assistant to the minister. I have attended many conferences, but I can tell you categorically and clearly that we want to engage young people, you want to engage people, you have to give them an open space. You have to go to the community. You have to ensure that the space is both for formal and informal, for you to have an accurate data, for you to have a data that will help your decision making in governance. You need to create those spaces. So it's not a waste of money.
Okay, thank you so much for that. All right, let me come back to Osisiogu. Talking about the interest of the youths now, what do you think the youths really want going into the National Youth Conference? What are they asking for? What's their cry? What are they hoping to achieve from this conference?
Thank you. First of all, the youth wants to be heard, and the youth want to be part of processes the youth want, like it's popularly said, nothing for us without us. There's no how you can turn out policies for the youth. And I think it's very responsible of this government to give the youth what they are clamoring for. The youth want to come together, launch ideas and all that. So I don't know, for whatever person who talked about engaging on Twitter space, I don't know, even the National Assembly, they don't meet on Twitter space. Even the NSAS did not deem it necessary to remain with a hashtag on Twitter space. They have to gather somewhere. So also in that positive way, the youth want to come together to basically to be part of governance, to make input into policy and see that this government also belongs to us. And I think in line with what the president calls it, is a renewed hope. So the hope is beginning to come into concretization by having the youth be part of policy making and of course its implementation as well. So basically, I think being part of conversations and policy making, and then I'm sure that beyond that, we can take it up from there. I'm not sure what is going to be. I'm going to preempt the outcome of the National Youth Confab, but I want to think that it's an avenue for the youth to express themselves and be part of governance. And I'm sure Mr. President is going to listen to them. We are seeing in Africa today where you see lack of such platforms has made people turn to militia, criticism of government, see DRC Congo today, see Sudan and other parts of sub-Saharan Africa like the Chad Basin. So, okay, look at what has happened in Kenya last year. So I think Mr. President is preempting all of those issues by making sure like you have constructive engagement where you can express yourself. So I think beyond this National Youth Confab, anybody that goes to descend into unwholesome violence, bloodletting, and any other anticlimax way of expressing ourselves should not be allowed to be. So Mr. President is giving us a platform we must maximize and take advantage of, and not and for us to eschew all other forms of violence and unwholesome means of antagonizing government to express ourselves. So I want to say those of us that are in different places, young people want to express themselves on Twitter, anywhere you are, this is an opportunity for you to come out and engage and be part of this government and see how we take it up from there. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Osisiogu. Marwan, let me come back to you. And now we have spoken extensively about the conference itself, why it's necessitated, and the precedents. But I want us to also talk about the implementation part of it, because again, a lot of people believe that meeting and just discussing will not exactly solve our problems. So how does the government ensure, or stakeholders ensure, the implementation of whatever is going to be discussed? And this is not to be too forward, but we know that we already have an idea of what the conversation will be centered around. How do we ensure that implementation, that there is implementation, that all of these conversations are followed up immediately, so as to ensure that we start seeing results as quickly as possible?
Okay, thank you very much for this question. Let me say that even before the National Youth Conference, the Honorable Minister of Youth Development, Honorable Comrade Ayodele Olawande, have already started putting a strategy for implementation, because one of the key things is that an open door policy that he has to discuss with young people, to hear their voices and all that. And also, as I have told you earlier, that implementation of the outcome of the National Youth Conference can also feed into our national youth policy as a country. Of course, the major implementing body for the national youth policy is the Ministry of Youth Development. Alongside other agencies, issues that concern young people in education should be channeled to the Ministry of Education. Issues that concern youth in terms of policy for employment and employability should also be concerned with the Ministry of Labor and Productivity. But the ministry that is saddled with the responsibility of driving the process of the implementation, formulating policies and bringing stakeholders on board is the Ministry of Youth Development. Today, the Honorable Minister of Youth Development, since his inception, have already initiated, as I've told you, our priority is to support, protect, and empower, empower, and protect young people. These are the three critical priorities for the Ministry of Youth Development. We have a national youth policy that is under review with 6 thematic areas, which are all focused on youth development: youth in health, youth in education, youth in governance and political processes, climate change, and all sorts of that. Minister of Youth Development, since inception in office, has initiated the Nigerian Youth Academy. As I told us, as we are today, we have about 470 young people in Nigeria that have registered and subscribed on the platform. This platform has also trained young people. It's a platform that will serve as a place where young people will learn at least 2 skills. And after learning those skills, you can be able to be empowered, because there are a lot of employment partners that are there, that are looking for people. As I can speak to you now, today in the Office of the Minister of Youth Development, we have employed a graphic designer who learned a skill from the Nigerian Youth Academy. Today, she worked with us in the Office of the Minister of Youth Development. And also, the Minister has initiated Nigerian Youth Health Desk, which is domiciled in the Ministry of Youth Development, where young people at the community level can be able to dial those helplines, and their responses, their complaint can be responses, because it serves as a 991 for us. Young people have lodged complaint, and what we do normally, we collaborate with the Nigerian Police Force to ensure that we've identified an area where the problem is, because the National Youth Health Desk is to help young people who are having domestic abuses, both male and female, and also who are being harassed at the community level, to ensure that the police force has also responded quickly, and also to ensure that the relevant authorities are alerted. So for us, we already have an initiative, and also I mentioned the presidential loan scheme under the President Bola Tinubu, which a lot of young people have also benefited and are also benefiting from that initiative. The president has already approved the National Empower Program, which you will soon hear from the Ministry of Humanitarian about it. And also the package is there for the Nigerian Youth Investment Fund for the continuation of the process. Don't forget that President Muhammadu Buhari initiated it and also injected about 75 billion. And also the President Bola Tinubu has continued the process with the approval of 106 billion to roll out the project. And this year, our focus is that we say that you don't need to know minister before you get support from government. You have to follow through the process, and the process will respond to you and will identify you and give you what you deserve as a government. So these are kind of the initiative. In terms of engaging with development partners, including the implementation of the National Youth Policy, the minister have already set aside a project unit, which will also coordinate with the state government. We are not just having a policy as a paper, but also we want to ensure that the National Youth Policy is aligned with what the state government's Ministry of Youth is doing at the state level. And also the mechanism for monitoring and evaluation to ensure alignment. If the federal government of Nigeria have set aside 6 thematic areas, we also intend to engage with the state government to ensure that our key areas has also aligned with the programs and initiative of the state government. When I said state government, I mean all the 36 states and the federation. So, it is a government that want to unite Nigeria and want to support Nigerian youth, irrespective of your political party or political affiliation. So this is one of the strategies that some have already been commenced, but also the National Youth Policy, the National Youth Conference conversation can also feed into our National Youth Policy, which will be domesticated and validated by the National Executive Council led by President Bola Tinubu. So we intend to do a reverse conversation. At the 7th National Council on Youth Development, the commissioners of youth have gathered and recommend 15% budgetary allocation for the youth project in this country, which means that it is expected by the budget in 2026 that the state government and the federal government are supposed to align the 15% budget allocation for youth development across Nigeria. I'm telling you this so that also people that are hearing, also from the development partners and the civil society who are doing youth-focused projects, to ensure that this advocacy is taken down to the community level so that the state government can also implement the recommendation by the 7th National Council on Youth Development. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much for that as well. Okay, let me come back to Osisiogu and very quickly ask about youth participation and youths amplifying their voices. So basically, I'm asking you what the responsibilities of the youths are, because most times we tend to get carried away with what the responsibility of stakeholders, the government is. What do you think the youths need to do in terms of participation, in terms of amplifying their voices, in terms of being a part of decision-making, especially the ones that concern them?
Yes, thank you very much. I want to say that what we need to do now is that this is an opportunity for us as young people. So what is most expedient now is to see us take full advantage of this very opportunity that has been made available to us. I also want the youth to understand that we must not digress at this time. We must take full advantage of this opportunity. I'll call on those who are saying, I'm talking about Twitter space and all of that. There's no how you can have a nice and a productive conversation without having it in a coordinated manner. So we want to implore even those delegates who have found a slot in being in the National Youth Confab to also extend it by having community town hall meeting with youth development, with youth. I'm sure that some of them can also have Twitter space conversations with youth, so that we can actually not just relay our opinions as delegates, but of course also make extend the platform to other youth that we represent. For instance, nothing stops the National Youth Council of Nigeria or the National Association of Nigerian Students to have a pre-confab town hall meeting to also gauge the collective opinion of the young people as to what we expect and what we want to, what our input must be at the National Youth Confab. Then, generally, beyond the confab, I think we need to, the youth need to understand that it is no longer the future being ours. It's going to be the government being ours. If the government is giving us this kind of opportunity, what it means is that the government is ours already. So we want to engage constructively with government, take advantage of the various youth development programs, like was mentioned by my very good comrade, Marwan, by the Ministry of Youth Development, so in terms of public, private sector, and otherwise. So the more we don't take advantage of most of these, we've seen the student loan scheme, sensitization going across campuses in Nigeria, it's telling students to even take advantage of them. So I think that the youth need to rise up and take advantage of so many progressive and constructive programs made available by this government for our own development and progress. And generally, we must be part of government. There's no option we have about it. We must eschew all forms of violence and all sorts of this and be part of government. The government that gives opportunity to express ourselves should not also be the same government that we want to complain of much later if things don't go well. So it's an opportunity for us that we must and we should take advantage of and express ourselves and be part of policy making to our own advantage. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much. I think this would be the perfect place to end the conversation. As much as we have a lot more to talk about, we're really looking forward to the National Youth Conference and seeing what we can achieve from it, the conversations there, and the results that will stem from that conversation. I want to say a big thank you to Marwan Umar-Gwamba, a Special Assistant to the Minister of Youth Development, Nigeria, and of course, a big thank you to Osisiogu Osikenyi, the President, All Africa Students Union. Thank you for your contributions on the show regarding the topic, and definitely we look forward to seeing how everything turns out. Thank you once again. This has been a beautiful episode, a very interesting conversation, and like I said, we will look forward to see how the National Youth Conference turns out, and hopefully the interests of the youth are represented, and most importantly, there is a follow-up implementation regarding the concerns of the youth, which include unemployment, political participation, and so many more. My name is Blessings Mosugo. Thank you for watching today's episode of Fafanua Africa. Do watch to join us on our subsequent episodes as we bring you more issues and tackle these issues as they pertain to the youth across the African continent. Thanks for watching.